along the recording process for both, and I think we're ready to go. Okay, great. So hopefully you can see my screen as well. Yep. And let me just go to the chat. Okay. So I actually find the video very distracting, but it's okay. Let's just, slowly have a look at some of the stuff. Okay, so again, reminder everyone, right? With regards to the assessment. So we're completing a short film, okay? So the name of the film, working title, is In the Forest, right? So I already talked to you guys about, the idea behind the story or behind the short film. And then we talked about, things like what world this belongs in. So our style will be stylized, right? Typical with, feature films or content for, kids. Again, we haven't really specified what style that is. But if we go with, let's say, inspiration images, this might be, perhaps close. We're not talking about photorealistic stuff. We're talking about stylized stuff. That includes our characters, and that includes things like our environment, right? So assets and all of that stuff. Now, can we adjust it? Yes, we can. The reality of the situation is, if you're doing this in production, the process of production design, making sure that everyone is clear with regards to what the design is and what the look we're aiming for, that's really something very important. Unfortunately, right, since we're doing a class that involves online, face-to-face, and a lot of different types of variables, it will be tricky for us to spend too much time laying out what the design and the look for that film is. Okay, so we're just seeing, so it's more organic. We're going to see how the look develops as we move along. But again, in an actual production, you want this really locked in. We actually call that a design Bible, a production Bible, very early on. All right, but for this one, let's just see how it goes. It's more organic at this stage. So with that said, okay, with regards to the assessment, everything will be different from one assessment to the next. So your assessment will be based off what role you're in, and then what I specified you need to submit. Okay, so we already talked about this last week. So if you're doing environments, or if you're doing characters, then your submission will be based off that particular idea. So again, it's role based, right? So it might be different this assessment, it might be different the next assessment. And with that said, we already talked about what you guys will be doing. Now the thing is, I might change this a little bit, and the reason is we change it because there might be additional things that we need to think about. Okay, I won't change it drastically where you go to a totally different thing that you don't like doing, but we're going to perhaps add a few things that you need to do, or perhaps add or specify things that you need to consider when creating or completing your your task. Okay, so again, I already shared with you the link, right? So maybe for the students joining us online, maybe I can just copy the link and then share it again in the chat. But you can have a look as well. But we'll explore that as we move forwards. Okay? So hopefully it's clear in terms of what you guys need to do. Okay? So what are our next steps? Our next steps is, let's have a look at what you guys were able to complete. Right? So as I mentioned, what I want to do is probably start approving some of the stuff, or specifying what the direction for our short film will be. Okay? So a couple of things. At least today, we're going to perhaps specify which story we're going with. So as I mentioned, right, there's I think 3 or 4 of you who tried developing a story. I'm going to specify which one we're going for, and which one we can start enhancing. Right? So that's the first thing. We'll also have a look at the final hero asset designs that we'll be using. We'll also explore, there's effects there, but I'm talking about environment and props as well. Okay? So with that said, let's have a look at story. Okay? So I'm going to open Teams, and let's just see what you guys come up with. I'll just quickly have a look. Let's see. So we have a few submissions, and again, we can consider stuff at this stage if you haven't, participated or engaged in the challenge, because obviously we can't wait until everyone is able to chip in before we actually start deciding what story we're aiming for, right? So again, this is just the nature of what we're what we have at this stage. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at our week 1 challenge, and let's see what we have. Okay. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so good job from everyone from the story with regards to what you're able to do. So I do like what Nimod has completed at this stage, and I also so it's a shot list and also a rough storyboard giving us an idea of what the story is. So that's good. But at this stage, right, we're going with what Will has developed. Okay, so what does this mean, everyone? So we're going with this particular story in mind. Are we locked with the specific shots? No, we're not. But the flow of the story will probably be, I guess, in reference to what Will has created. Okay, so I'll explain to you guys what you need to do afterwards, but I'll just give you a quick rundown of the story. So again, we have an establishing shot, a couple of establishing shots there. But again, like I mentioned, we're not locked to those shots. Maybe we have 3 or 2 more shots just to establish the scene. So again, it's important, especially if it's a totally new environment, right? We want a lot of establishing shots just to make sure we showcase our environment and also, just give the audience an idea of where we're at. Okay, so that's the story, right? We establish the shots. And then we have the robot character using some sort of welder to fix the first panel. So we don't have the design of the panel yet, but he's fixing something. Okay. Then we see Gecko peeking over the rock somewhere. So it can be rocks, it can be something else. But the idea is Gecko is peeking in the ground, looking inquisitively. Okay. So again, Gecko is curious with what Whack is doing. So Gecko walks over to Whack and gestures to help. Okay, but again, Whack is angry because he feels like Gecko is in the way, right? So now again, I'll let you guys have a look at that later on as well. But again, the idea is Whack storms out, and then in the next shot we have. Again, we're not locked to those shots, right? So for example, we're not locked to a 2-shot like this. We're not locked to a close-up. We're not really locked to an over-the-shoulder shot similar to that one. Okay? On top of that, see, there's some obvious things there that you guys need to consider. You need to expand it. Okay? So for example, I would probably prefer after this shot, we have another wide shot that showcases where, or that describes or that shows where Whack is going. So maybe a top view or maybe a really wide shot, just to again remind the audience that this is where they are, right, with regards to the environment. So again, we're not locked to the specific flow of the shots, right, but we are going with Will's idea with regards to how the story will go. Okay, so have a look at the storyboard. But again, similar to what I talked about last week, it is Whack again tries to fix something, and then Gecko tries to help, but then Gecko realizes that Whack forgets something, and then in the end, Gecko was able to help Whack, and then they laugh and they become friends. Okay, so just before we continue, is this okay with everyone? Again, we're not locked to every single shot. Okay, what we can do is, if you're in the story department, you can add additional shots if you want. You can change, let's say, the shots and change the camera angles. So you can explore the story a bit more if you're in story, right? But the idea or the flow of the narrative is going to be what Will has presented here. Okay? So just checking with everyone if it's clear in terms of what the story will be. So I guess we have questions online. I think for Nisarg, I think having Gecko jump onto the scene and breaking what... Okay. Yep, so maybe some ideas with regards to the story. But again, the thing is, it looks like Gecko wants to be friends, so we probably want to avoid the situation where Gecko actually creates the conflict rather than, trying to, I guess, rather than having the conflict already exist at the start. Okay, but again, we'll have a look at that, as we move along. So others are talking about the eyes. Just checking with everyone else here. Is everyone okay with the story? So just checking with Jahi, Jared, Meg, Nisar, Will, and the students here, Isabel and Nimod. You guys are fine with this? Okay? Okay, so if everyone's fine, I'll tell you guys what you need to do, okay, for later on. So if you're in story, then I'll tell you what you need to do as a story artist, as a layout artist. If you're environments, I'll also explain what you guys need to do. But everyone else is okay. Any other comments at this stage? Okay? Okay, that's good. Let's see. So you guys can have a look at the story as well of other students. I think we have Nimod also providing the example there. The reason, I guess, why I chose this is primarily because it's a bit more refined from a storyboarding perspective, what the shots might look like. And at the same time, it's easy for everyone to already visualize what each shot might look like. Okay, so maybe that's my main reason. Okay, so with that said, we have the story already specified, right? So as mentioned, story specified, everyone's good with that. So let's have a look at the next thing. Let's have a look at environments. Okay, so we only have one submission for the environment. So that means we'll go with, I think that's Isabel's idea for the environment, right? So this is going to be our, I guess, inspiration and guide for the environments that we're doing, okay? So as I mentioned, for this one, if I get it correctly, the environment will be a combination of an ancient temple, some dense forests, and then there's the main facility there. And then it will be a forest style with some ancient city debris, right? If that's correct. Okay. So again, that's, I guess, the visual direction for the environment. We do have a floor plan with regards to how this environment will work. So maybe let's have a look at that. Okay, there you go. So floor plan. Okay. So what Isabel is recommending is that we have some sort of mountainscape here in this. So this is the main facility, right? So when I say main facility, that's where we don't necessarily see what's inside the facility, but basically that's where, that becomes the main background, especially when we have, so just imagine that's where WAC lives, right? So that's the facility where WAC, does this research or whatever. Okay, this is the panel, the broken panel or broken system. I say panel, it doesn't have to be a literal panel. It can just be some sort of broken communication system for the first one. And then this is the second panel where they do, where, another gag happens. And the third panel where, they finally become friends. Okay, so basically the flow of the story starts here and then goes in this counterclockwise, flow, right? So start here, all the way there. But what Isabel is suggesting, right, is we have a main facility here. Okay, panels. When I say panel, let's just call that some sort of research stuff or some sort of smaller facility or communications unit here, for example, or unit here, another research unit here. All of them are broken, right? Maybe there's a thunderstorm in the previous night. Okay, so we have those three things. We haven't really specified what the designs of those three things are, but again, we have some ideas there. So, other things. This is surrounded by dense forest, so maybe that's a dense forest here, that's a dense forest here. Again, there's a lot of things we can enhance, right? So I'm thinking, where are the roads going, right? Are they coming from the facility going out? Or what's happening in this panel area here? Are there, broken stuff as well? Or are there, other things like whatever, right? So how do we populate these areas here? Panel 1, panel 2, and panel 3. There is an ancient temple here, and then there's a debris of an ancient temple here. So basically, the facility is maybe studying that particular, I guess, ancient city of some sort. Okay? So, again, lots of things you can still refine. If you're working in environments, though, this is going to be your guide in terms of where things are placed and what we're expecting the environment to be. Okay? Is this, I guess, clear with everyone? Just checking. So as I mentioned, right, this is going to be the direction. Okay. Now, Isabel also provided a mood board or inspiration board for what those things might look like. So I guess I'll just go back. There you go. So that's some inspiration boards there with regards to what that environment might look like. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'm going to treat this area as a prop, this area as a prop, this area as a prop, this area as a prop. So what that means is if you're assigned in props, I might ask you to populate that area, populate this area, populate this, or not populate. Let me just refrain. Not populating, it's more of set dressing. Technically, we call that set dressing. We need to dress that area to make it look authentic. But again, it has to fit the overall direction for environment. Okay, so if you're an environment artist, what I might ask you to do is make sure that we have some sort of the landscape there is properly, again, macro stuff, right? If you're an environment artist, so make sure you don't have to model the panels and the facility, but what you do need to think about is how you organize and lay out the ancient temple, the debris here, what it looks like, and how you create the landscape, and how you perhaps find ways to populate the forest, and what the ground here might look like as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, you don't need to model this, and this, but you do need to create everything else in terms of what that might look like. Okay, so does that make sense? So just checking if everyone is good with this particular environment design. So just checking online. So anyone with any concerns or questions at this stage? So the students here, you're good with this one? Makes sense? Okay, so basically we move from here going there. Okay? Anyone else? Let's see. Okay. Great. So I think we're good. Okay, great. So question, I guess, from Meg, what that means, right, is if you're in props. Props can mean a lot of things. Props can mean one object, but for you guys, when I say props, I'll probably include all the props and even how those props are arranged in that particular area, so the panel area, right? And then if you're assigned panel 2, again, let me just emphasize that it doesn't have to be a panel, right? Just imagine that can be, and let me just, it might be a communications, it might be a communications apparatus, it might be, a leisure spot, whatever, right? So again, it says panel, but it's basically a sub facility or sub whatever, sub area, right? So again, that involves modeling what's inside it and also modeling that main piece. So you can consider this a, the object there to be the main prop, but you have to also create the sub props around it. Does that mean that you can share props? Yes. For example, if for example you have, let's say, a power, someone designed a power box for energy or power, then it's impractical for each one to come up with their own power box. You probably want, you probably want to have the same type of power bank or power box for all of them. So see, there's some opportunities for you to do collaboration or share assets, but I do want unique designs for the first, the second, and the third panel, if that makes sense. Okay. Question is, can we find models, free models? Yes, so you can. Okay. Be careful though. Normally, so you don't want to model trees, right? Well, you can if you want stylized trees. You have a specific style in mind, which I probably recommend, because if you download trees, those are really high-res ones. But everything else, like rocks, I don't really recommend you to model rocks. Maybe you need to think about... So my concern, right? So to answer your question, if you use too many downloaded stuff, then you won't be able to use this in your portfolio much, primarily because everything is downloaded and you can't really showcase your skills. So if I'm doing it, I'll make sure that I'll probably model the ancient temple area. I'll maybe combine my models, or maybe I'll have hero stuff in the debris area and maybe combine that with downloaded stuff. But I need to have stuff there that I actually did just for my portfolio, right? So I guess best way to, answer that question, okay? But it's not just that. Think about, because if you just rely on people modeling the panel 1, 2, and 3 and someone else doing the main facility, how do they relate to one another? It will just look like disjointed objects. So how can you make it in such a way that they relate? Do you create, let's say, fences from one panel to the other panel, or do you create, let's say, some sort of wall or some sort of, I guess you have some inspirations here. So those are the things you need to think about as an environment artist, right? How can you make things cohesive rather than having everything disjointed? So what will make them all cohesive and make it look like they all belong to the same environment? So an example here is, see, the thing that binds them in this one is just the, I guess, this one. See, notice that whatever that is, hanging fern, if that's consistent with everything, then that actually, binds. So see, that one as well, see, the walkway allows you to bind those individual areas together to make it look appealing, okay? If you want more control, then maybe provide your direction directly to the prop artist in terms of what you want those props to perhaps look like. So maybe provide an inspiration board to them, but it's not a requirement, okay? But if you want, if you're concerned that everything might, if things might not look cohesive because, the color scheme of this person might be different from this one, then maybe as environment artists, and that's what happens in industry, you just provide, I guess, direction in terms of what you might want for that particular asset, right? Otherwise, yeah, for example, if someone comes up with a circular design, so this is where some sort of collaboration needs to happen, guys. Because, for example, if the guy or if a person doing the main facility is doing some sort of, circular design with a lot of organic shapes, and then another one is doing robotic designs that are very angular, then we might have an issue in terms of how that, looks like together, right? So again, there is an aspect of collaboration that's needed, okay? So we'll see how it goes, okay? Okay, so with that said, let's have a look at other things. So we do have, there you go. So we do have the environment there. So I'll have a look. I'll explain what you guys need to do in environments after. So we'll just have a look at other things, okay? So, hero designs, primarily for the WAC character or for the robot character. So, instead of doing sketches or designs, you guys just went ahead and just implemented or just blocked out what we already have in terms of designs. So, what I'm going to suggest, right? Rather than choosing which one everyone else needs to do, okay? I'll just let you guys come up or create your own model or your own version of it, okay? So you can collaborate a little bit if you want, but I will allow you to, I will allow you to just continue with whatever direction you currently have. Just again, just some reminder, right? we need it to be a bit more cute and a bit more expressive. So find ways to, make, I guess, so just an example, how can you make, from a design perspective, right? You know that the character needs to react in a lot of different ways. How can you make it more expressive? Does that mean you make the eyes more, I guess, more complex, where you can rotate individual elements, or maybe there's some sort of eyelids there that allow it to close and open? So those are design things that you need to think about. So another example here is maybe a mouth might be useful, maybe it's not. So think about how you can enhance the design to make it, again, so if I'm doing it, right, I'm going to look at the storyboard, okay? So I look at the storyboard, I know that the character needs to be expressive. That means, see guys, that means the eyes, okay, might need to be significantly detailed. Meaning I have to maybe there's, I need to model maybe I need to model the iris separately. I need to model the outer part separately so I can have it rotate. Or maybe, again, other things, right? In terms of what I need, okay? Another thing is looking at this, we might need close-ups of the hands and the fingers, because we see some shots where the character is actually doing stuff, right, with his hands. There might be a situation where we need a close-up of the fingers themselves. That means that's a design problem, meaning you look at the designs and you actually think about, how can I make that, how can I make the fingers and the hands expressive enough when we need a close-up of those fingers? So what does this mean? If I look at the designs that you guys have already, see, that might mean, I can't zoom in, but that might mean, see, we might need significant detail, modeling detail there, so it stands in a close-up. Okay, so again, maybe a simple, maybe that won't be enough. Maybe we actually want the fingers to look even more detailed. So maybe this palm thing here, notice that if I look at it in a close-up, that might not look good. Okay, so I have to think about how the hands will look like, how this area will look like, because again, we have the character using his hands, and so we might end up having shots on the hands, so we might need to make sure that that model there and that design there is really fleshed out. Okay, another thing is, as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of close-ups of the face. Okay, so lots of close-up of the face. What does that mean? That means that I need to reconsider my design to make sure that the face actually looks very expressive. So just to give you guys an idea, so see, this one, see, will this look good in a close-up? If we do a close-up, what does the mouth actually look like? What does the mouth do? Is it able to open and close? Is it able to do other things as well? So see, maybe if I'm doing a close-up, maybe I need to reconsider, right, what's happening here, because that might be a bit too bare. Or again, it might be a texturing thing. But again, I leave it up to you guys. Okay? So again, lots of things you need to think about. So rather than combining the designs together, I'll let you guys perhaps reconsider your designs, look at the storyboard, see what you guys need to enhance. Okay? Another example. See, for example, I understand that this is a blackout, so what that means is you might need significant detail on the ears area, right? Because that might be very visible when we're doing a close-up or extreme close-up of the face. Okay? So, again, other things as well is, so I do like Meg's input there with regards to thin at the base, flat at the top. So again, but the important thing is you really want to make sure that it looks appealing. So for example, I like the cuteness of this. I guess that's primarily because of proportions. So you have to play around with proportions in terms of what will make the character look more appealing. So this is where the blocking comes in, right? So maybe, do I make the torso bigger? Do I make the hands bigger? So again, so I like, for example, I like the hands here, but maybe the proportion is better here. And maybe, I like how this is designed. And so, but I also like how this one is, how the middle bit here is also, designed. Okay, so this might be important, right? So again, maybe that's where the power of the robot comes from. Okay, so again, a few things that you need to think about. Okay, so what I'll do is, again, I'll let you guys think about that. You just come up with your own version. So I think I'll explore. I'll have a look at who's doing what, and then we'll talk about what you guys need to perhaps think about moving forwards. Okay, so is that clear for everyone at this stage in terms of the character? Again, if anyone has suggestions, just make sure to give your suggestions to the students doing the characters or creating the characters, because you might have some ideas, right, that can really help. Okay, so an example here, see, notice that we might have an over-the-shoulder shot of the character. That means you have to think about what's happening at the back of the head. Okay, so what can we do to make that back of the head look even more appealing? Is it a texturing thing? Is it a modeling thing? Okay, so again, lots of things you guys need to think about. Anyway, going back. First character is clear. Can we guys move on to the next one? Just checking with everyone here if you guys are happy with the main character as well. You guys are fine, no questions. For the students joining us online, are you also good with the characters? With robot character. So it looks like no questions or concerns. Okay, great. Okay, let's have a look at the gecko character. Okay, so for the gecko character, I think it's Jaehi opting to redesign the character. As I mentioned, it is an option to redesign the character, right? So I like it because it looks like, are we making the character female, or again, it doesn't really say. Just checking with Jaehi. So if it at this age, it probably doesn't matter, right? But I do like how what the design looks like. Okay, so again, I like the addition of the scarf there, and I also like the proportions. Although again, not sure if, you know what, should be good. We can make it. We can make the proportions cuter, I guess, if that's something that you guys want to think about later on. But we're going with this particular design. Okay. Again, if you're a character modeler and you're assigned, or you're in your characters and you're assigned to do the gecko one, that means you have to follow this design now. Okay. So you can't design your own gecko, because again, this is the approved one. So we're going to go with this particular character. Okay. So is this clear for everyone at this stage? You guys are fine with the character as well? No issues? Good? Great. Okay, so with that said, okay, everyone's fine? Okay. Okay. So everyone's good? No questions? Okay, with that said, let's have a look at prop designs. Okay, so I'm not sure, sorry, haven't really looked at the props too much yet. So there are designs for the blowtorch, and there are designs, so we have limited designs currently shared, right? So again, as I mentioned, right? So what I'll do in props is, I'll just, since there's no designs there that we can choose, what I'll do is, if you're assigned a particular prop, you're not only assigned the design of it, you're also assigned the creation of it, right? So the implementation of it. So we won't deal with texturing yet, but I will ask you to not only design, but also create the prop. Okay? Okay, great. So if you redesign the gecko, that's all good as well. We can have a look. But as I mentioned, we might end up just just using what we currently have, but feel free to share it as well. Okay, great. Let's have a look at what you guys need to do next. So everyone's good with everything, right? What I'll do is I'll investigate what we currently have in terms of who is doing what. Okay? Okay, so we have whack, robot. Okay? You know what? Let's have a look at story first. Okay. So story involves Will, Nimod, and Sophia. Is it clear for Will, Nimod, and Sophia what story you're using? You're going to be using Will's one, and then the thing is, as I mentioned, right? There's flexibility there. You can add additional shots if you want, or you're not locked to, let's say, the shot type or the shot size. You can do a close-up. You can do other things as well. But just make sure that the flow of the story is, I guess, similar to that. Okay. So, just checking, I'll specify later on what you guys need to do because you won't be storyboarding anymore. So just to emphasize, Will, Nimad, and Sophia won't be storyboarding anymore. We already have a storyboard. We want to convert that into the process of layout. And I will talk about layout later on. So basically, you'll do it in 3D. We're going to start designing our shots in 3D. Okay, so that's for Will, Nimad, and Sophia. Let's have a look at other things as well. Environments. Okay, so environments. We currently have Isabel and Blaze working on the environments. That means that we already have, again, we're going with Isabel's designs for the environment, right? And what I'll do is I'm going to perhaps give you guys an idea in terms of how you can, proceed with the environments. There is still an aspect of design, but we start doing stuff in 3D already. And I'll explain what you guys need to do. So I think that's good. Characters. Okay, so characters, we have Jared and Nisarg for the Whack Robot. As I mentioned, Jared, you can create your own version based off what you currently have. Nisarg as well, you can create your own version. We're going to make this competitive, right? Meaning, you come up with a model, Jared comes up with a model, and then in the end, let's see what you guys need to do. Okay, what you guys need to, what you guys need to do. So, is that clear for Nisarg and Jared? But what I'll do though is, I'll add a few things here. Okay, what will I add? Since the character will be doing a few things. Okay. Since this is character related, I'm going to assign the tools for the character to use on you guys as well. Okay? So remember, first that the character needs to use the character needs to use some sort of welding device. Okay? So what I want Nisarg and Jared to do is to design and model a welding device for the character as well. Is it integrated in the character or is it separate from the character? I leave it up to you. But as I mentioned, you know what? We probably need this to be separate. So the reason why I want you guys to do it instead of a props artist is because the character needs to hold it with his hands. So for the proportion to be correct, you have to have access, or you have to model the object with reference to the hands. Okay, so the character needs to be able to grab the torch or the welder. Okay, so is that clear? So just checking with the students doing I think that's Jared and Nisarg. Is it clear? So there's two things though. I'm going to ask you to do the welding device, and I'll also ask you to I'll ask you to also do a futuristic wrench or whatever. Okay, let's just call it a futuristic wrench. Okay, so again, there's two things that I will ask you guys to also create, right? Because the character will need to hold them, right? So with that said, let me just share that here. So you're not only creating the Whack robot, you're also creating, and let me just do this. You're also creating the props, Whack props, okay? Again, it can be integrated in the character or it can be a separate thing, but again, that's going to be a futuristic welder. I'm not even sure if that's a thing, but let's have a look at also futuristic wrench. There you go. Okay, so again, that's on top of the modeling that you'll end up doing, right, for the character itself. Okay, so just checking if that's clear for both Jared and Nisarg. So clear, guys, in terms of what you need to do. Okay, so not redesign, design. So design a wheel, so a wielder, a welder, and a wrench, a futuristic one. Okay. No, we not for this week. I'll specify what you guys need to do. Okay. Okay, great. So I think they're good. Okay, perfect. So with that said, let's have a look at the gecko character. So for the gecko character, again, we can have a look at Shihao's design later on. But for now, as of the moment, we're going with Jaehee's design. Okay? So, what that means is Shihao and Jaehee will be implementing the design specified here. Okay, that means you're modeling. Ideally, with organic models, if you're good with ZBrush, you probably want to do a ZBrush workflow for that. But if not, then a typical Maya to sculpting workflow is fine. But I normally prefer a ZBrush workflow for this. But we'll talk about workflows later on anyway. Okay? So just checking if that's... But I'll add another thing. Okay? Because looking at the story, right? Gecko wants to help. So Gecko wants to help. So let's see. So Gecko wants to help. So in the story, Gecko tries to give a hammer. So let's just create a primitive looking hammer. So the hammer comes from Gecko. So what does a hammer that comes from a talking or from a walking gecko character look like? Okay, so again, I'll put that as one of the tasks for the students doing the So I'll put that as one of the tasks for the students doing the gecko character. Okay. So I also want you guys to also create a primitive. Not primitive. So I'll just put here Gecko's hammer. Okay. So what is it made of? Right. We might do a close-up for that as well. So Gecko's hammer. So it's a prop from Gecko. Okay. So Gecko's hammer there. Okay. So just checking with Shihao and Jaehee if that's clear in terms of what you guys need to do. So checking if it's clear for you guys as well. Okay. So we'll start with Jaehee's design for the gecko. We implement that, but we also need to create the hammer, right? So this is basically for week 4, right? That's your first assessment, okay? And explain, hey, are you in this class?
No, that's a theory. I'm just dropping off my things.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, that's all good. So any questions with regards to the gecko character? You guys good? Okay. With that said, let's have a look at other things. Okay. Props. Since we don't have a lot of props, I know we have a lot of props, but since we don't have a lot of sharing of props, that means actually Nadel shared a few. That means I might, you know what? So I might need to just combine this. So let me just remove that, and then let's just go hero props. Okay? Okay. So what I'll do, right, is I'm going to assign. Remember, what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat the area as a prop, the immediate area as a prop. So remember what we're doing, everyone? Yikes. Looks like I accidentally closed it. Sorry guys, let me just close that. There you go. Okay, so as I mentioned, right? We're treating the immediate area as a prop. So what do you need to do? If you're assigned panel 1, and I say panel, but it's really just the area, right? So if you're assigned area 1 or panel 1, that means you create whatever it is that is, but at the same time, you need to populate the immediate area, okay? You don't need to create the ground, but you need to populate, or you need to set dress. We call that set dressing. So we need to set dress that area, okay? It will be a good idea for the props artists to actually collaborate with the environment artists for this. But again, that's the desired workflow. But I do want you to just make sure that that area is populated. So you model not only the panels, but also the smaller props that might need to be in place, or that might need to be there in that particular area. Okay? So hopefully that's clear. I'm not sure if anyone's doing props that's joining. No, Meg is joining us, and she's doing props. But I think everyone else is probably just watching the recording. So what I'll do is I'm going to perhaps have a look at modifying this. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll have area or panel 1 assigned to Nadel. So again, it's not only the main, main prop and surrounding props. Okay, there you go. So main prop and surrounding props. There you go. So number 1, that will be Nadel. Okay, let's just change. Oops. So there you go. Okay. Let's see. So Gursevac as well will be working on another prop. So again, a lot of you just watch the recording. It's fine. We just need to specify who's doing what. Okay, so Gursevac. And lastly, that's area 2. Okay, so panel 2. And then panel 3. Okay, and this is important. That is you know what, maybe you know what, I'll just modify this a little bit. I'll have Edison make the first one, and maybe Nadel does the third one. 3, and then Edison panel 1. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. So Edison will be working on panel 1, Gursevac will be working on panel 2, Nadel will be working on with panel 3, and Meg, you'll be working on the main area, or the main facility. Okay, so main facility. So main facility. Okay, and then that's again main prop and the surrounding areas. So that will be Meg and Karina. So I'll make it competitive. So what I'll do is I'll just, so maybe I'll Gursevac and let's see, and Hugo for this one. Okay, and then we have Naomi and A and Edison. Okay, yeah. Okay. So I think just checking if that's clear for everyone in terms of what you're supposed to do. Okay. So Meg is good. Everyone else is good. So again, we specified who's doing what, right? Main facility. Let me just remove this. Oops. Yikes. So Meg and Karina, competitive. So Meg comes up with your own version. Karina comes up with her own version. And then Nadel's doing panel 3. Hugo and Gersovax creating panel 2. And then we have Edison and Naomi doing panel 1. Okay? So I think we assigned everything to everyone at this stage, right? Again, make sure to watch the recording so we can have a look at, so you know what you really need to do for each one. So one question is, so do we have a poly limit? A poly limit at this stage, we'll talk about your workflow later on, but poly limits for main characters, if you can cut it down to, let's say, 2 million polygons, or 1 million, sorry, not 2 million, 1 million should be fine, but I'm not too concerned because we can always adjust, unlike in games. But for this one, if you keep it to, let's say, below 1 million, that should be fine. Okay? But again, as I mentioned, we'll have a look at your workflow first. I'm more concerned about workflow than at this stage rather than specific poly counts. Okay, any other questions before we continue? Okay, so everyone here clear in terms of what you guys need to do. So still in story as well, and then everyone else. Good, right? Okay, great. Okay, with that said, okay, couple of things that we just need to specify, everyone. Okay, so everyone's clear. I'll talk about what you guys need to do. But one important thing that we need to talk about is how do we organize our files. Okay, so we want a situation where, the files that you create are automatically uploaded or updated in some sort of shared storage. So again, the idea behind this is this allows me access to the stuff that you have, and this also allows others access to the stuff that you created, right? Especially when we're creating animations or we're actually implementing our sequences, we have to be able to do this properly, okay? So what I'll do first is we'll specify. I'm going to give you guys, or I'm going to specify our online folder. So you can sync or you can share your work directly there. Is anyone familiar with OneDrive here? So as a student, you will have access to OneDrive. I think you have 1 terabyte worth or 200 gigabytes worth of OneDrive storage. That should be enough for what we're doing here. Okay? But as I mentioned, right? Anyone here who's not familiar with OneDrive? Okay? Just to give you guys an idea, I do have OneDrive here as an example. Okay? So this is OneDrive, guys. I have OneDrive as an app. So see? So I installed it as an app. You can actually see it, although you can't see it. It's installed, but basically it's an app. It's going to look something like, it's hard because, so I'm going to share it, right? So let me just share my screen. So let me just do a quick sec. There you go. Okay. So just to show you guys, this is what OneDrive looks like in my computer. So see, so it's an app, right? You can download that using Microsoft Teams or Microsoft OneDrive. Okay, and let me just, so it is an app. Okay, so the beauty behind that OneDrive app is once it's installed, files will automatically update, similar to Dropbox or Google Drive. So the idea behind this is, as I mentioned, it just allows us centralized storage, when we're working on our files, right? So I'm sharing that in the chat, okay? So notice now that, again, you are able to download OneDrive. As I mentioned, it's going to look something like this. But the idea is, everyone, the idea is, see, I have my OneDrive there. If I share that with someone, any update you do to that OneDrive page, so for example, any update or any modifications you do example, projects, anything you upload or update will automatically get updated to everyone else. So I always have access to the latest file, the latest version of your model, of your layout, your textures, and all of that stuff. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to set up our Microsoft, our OneDrive folder. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't do it here because we're using the MyLearn or your student account, so I have to do it online for now. But let me just show you what I mean. Okay. So see guys, I'm going to create a OneDrive folder, right? I'm going to plug that into our student projects. We already have an older project there. And I'm going to create a new folder. Okay? So I'm going to create a new folder here. And I'm just going to create maybe a green one. And I'll call that In the Forest. Okay? And then I'm going to just create a folder there. And then I'm going to share that with everyone. Okay? Meaning you can sync that to you if you install the OneDrive app. And I will talk about this more later on. Okay? So as I mentioned, I'm going to share this with everyone. RTA300. And this is going to be, not sure what RTA are we in. Sorry guys, let me just have a quick look. So this is RTA 1097. So 1097, there you go. Okay, so you can edit this. Okay, and I'll send it. Okay, and then I can copy it as well. Okay, so again, what you're able to do is you're able to install OneDrive, right? Once you install OneDrive, again, any updates, right, from anyone with regards to the project, it will automatically get synced to that OneDrive page. So what happens, or what OneDrive link or that OneDrive folder, and what happens is you will get instant access to the latest files or the most updated versions of files. Okay, so we'll explore this more as we move along, but that will be quite important because, as I mentioned, if we're already talking about textures and animation, you always want access to the latest textures. Otherwise, you end up relinking stuff. You don't want to do it all locally, right? And we'll explain that as we move along. Okay? So, what I'm thinking at this stage, right, is we'll just talk about what your process is. So, what is our next stages? Okay? So, our next stages is, it's actually simple. You just need to complete what you're assigned to do. So basically, if you're assigned the modeling of the character, then we complete the modeling of the character, right? Now, obviously, every single week we'll have some challenge just to, give me an idea of what your work in progress is, or working files look like. But again, what you need to do from this week forward is you just need to implement, or you just need to complete what you're assigned to do. And you need to do this before week 4. So, an example for this, layout, okay? So, asset is easy. Let's have a look at layout first. Okay, so let's just talk about some of the stuff that is going to be hard. Okay, for example, layout artist. We have 3 layout artists here. That's let's have a quick look. The 3 layout artists are Nimod, Sophia, and Will. Okay, so what are we doing, everyone? Okay. First stop, right? When you're a layout artist, okay? And I'll share this folder with you guys later on. I'm going to open Maya, and Maya will be our tool of choice for this particular, for this particular class. And let me just reset this. Okay, there you go. So, what are layout? If you're in the story department, right? What are we looking for? What are you supposed to complete? You're supposed to complete the layout of our sequence. It's like a previs. It's like shot development for our scene. And I already showed this to you guys last week in terms of what layout looks like. It is an actual career. So let me just show you, I guess, again, what is expected for you, right, in terms of completing stuff. So let me just quickly check. So for layout artists, right, this is what you guys will be doing. So let me just look at it again. RTA, presentation. Okay, so see guys, just to show you, right? For the layout artist here, this is what you're doing, right? You're designing, you're converting the storyboard into an actual, into a sequence, okay? Similar, I guess, to what you see here, okay? So see guys, notice now that, see? So see, so again, this, you don't have to animate, but you're converting the storyboard into an actual sequence, similar to what you see here. So that's the process of layout. Basically, you create what we call a previs. So again, maybe it's, I don't have an exact example here, but again, see this one, maybe this is a good idea. Okay, there you go. Okay, so as I mentioned, do you need the actual models to create or lay out the scenes or the shots? No, you don't. Okay, so just an example here. See, notice that I don't need the final models to start laying out my shots, to start designing my shots. This is the final sequence. Notice that the previs or the layout is actually still quite rough. Okay, so see, notice that I don't need the final props. I don't need the final environments to actually start designing my shots, designing my cameras or how the camera will move, and then planning out my shots. So as an layout artist, you can already start designing your shots, right? So this is what the layout artist will end up doing, designing the shots. So let's just go over the process because that will be important. So what's your process, guys? Okay, have a look at your storyboard first. Okay, make sure you understand the storyboard. Again, the approved storyboard, I already specified here. This is going to be our approved storyboard for, again, you don't have to implement every single shot, but this is, again, the approved flow of the story, right? We go with this particular storyboard. Okay, so make sure to have a look at that. Okay, so with that said, okay, what's your process in Maya? Okay, first stop, guys. Okay, and this is important for environment artists as well and even props. First thing we need to know is we need to have some sort of scale reference. We need to know how big everything is comparatively. That means we have to specify the dimensions and the proportions of our main characters. Okay? Now, just checking with the students doing the 3D characters because you already have it. Do you have the robot character there by any chance? Can you guys send it to me? So anyone doing the robot, I think that's Nisarg, and do you have a Maya file for this? So just checking with Jared and Nisarg. So can you guys perhaps quickly send it my way? Because maybe I'll just use that as our starting point. Okay? Because at least you already have something, you know, we already have a starting point. So first up, guys, we have to think about how big our character is. I don't really want to specify it myself. Maybe, you know what? Can we all agree that I guess can we all agree that perhaps the gecko character is maybe 1 meter? Again, it doesn't have to be specifically 1 meter, right? We'll just call it 1 unit. So we'll just have the gecko as 1 meter and maybe the robot slightly smaller. Can you guys just send the Maya file my way? OneDrive. Okay, so it looks like you already shared it in OneDrive. Okay, let's see if I see if I can access that here. Okay. There you go. So we do have, perfect. So I'll just download that. Okay, so let's have a quick look. You know what? We'll talk about layout. You know what? Let's just have a look at characters and then environments first. So I'll just extract all and then extract. Okay, and then maybe I'll just open this. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder, guys. So create a new Maya folder. So that's project window, and I'll just create a new, and I'll share this with everyone in the future. But for now, let me just specify a new one. I'll just plug that into my documents. So I'll just put it here, and then I'll just call that in the forest. Okay, and then I'll hit accept. And then I'll just make sure to copy that file. So quick sec, plug that in the forest, and then we have assets there, and I'll just paste that. Download. Perfect. So there you go. Okay, and then I'll just open that. Okay, so notice guys that we have this, I guess. So I'll just delete all history. Again, this is just a reference for us as a starting point. Let me just group everything together, and let me just scale this down. Okay? Okay, can we all agree that our character is, well, our main character, which is the gecko character, be 1 meter for now? So what I'll do guys is I'm going to look at, again, we're currently working on centimeters, which is fine. Okay? So we're currently working in centimeters. That's under settings, I guess. Linear centimeters, we don't have to change. That means our character, main character gecko, will be 100 centimeters. Okay, so I'll just create a polygonal cube. I'll make this polygonal cube 100 meters, and we do this almost in every production. But anyway, see, it's going to be 100 by 100 by 100. Okay, so there you go. Okay. So this is basically 100 by 100 by 100 centimeters. Okay, that means our gecko character, and let me just change this. I can't see anything here. There you go. That means, guys, our gecko character is about this tall. Okay, don't really have the gecko here. So what I'll do, guys, is maybe so this is robot blocking, so this is for blocking purposes only, and then I'll make the robot big, so maybe there you go. Okay, so this is going to be, notice that I scaled the character, I think it's 1. Let's see, you know what, perfect, looks like I like the initial scaling that Jared already has there, so maybe 1. Okay, and maybe I'll just have it go up like that. Okay, maybe a bit smaller, so maybe I'll scale it down 0.9. Okay, there you go. Okay, so this is going to be how big our robot character is. Let's have a look at our gecko character. Now we can just use a quick blackout for the gecko, so maybe this is our gecko character, guys. I'll just make that smaller, like so. So this is our gecko character, right? So what I'll do is maybe I'll just model this a little bit. So maybe I'll just, haven't done this type of modeling in a long time, but let's see. Edit mesh, extrude. And then edit mesh, extrude again. Okay, there you go. Okay, so maybe I guess something like that. Okay, and then I'll just increase the vertex. Okay, so this is our gecko block. So this is just for blocking, right? The proportions of gecko. I don't have arms there, so maybe we'll add arms later on. But for the meantime, you know what? I might just end up, let's see if I can just look for something that's similar. So I'll just go content browser, and maybe I can look for something that's a little bit similar to what we're doing. Yes. Yep. So we can modify that later on. Okay, so you know what? I'll use this. And then, again, this is just for blocking purposes, right? Select, and then I'll just scale it down. I'll just rotate this. that actually looks worse. So, that's weird. Okay, that's fine. You know what? Just imagine this is the head. Let me just modify the arms. So I'll just do symmetry in X, and maybe I'll just select. I'll insert an edge loop, and then I'll just add that in. And then maybe I'll just select the face here, edit mesh, extrude, offset that a little bit, and then scale it down, edit mesh, extrude, and then let's see. There you go. Okay, and then maybe again, just imagine those are the legs. You know what? It's hard to imagine those are the legs, so I'll just make legs. Okay, so I'll just go edit mesh, extrude, insert edge loop. Okay. So I'll just edit mesh, multi-cut. Okay. I'll just create polygon cube, make that bigger. So I'll just do this fast, guys. So there you go. And then maybe I'll just combine them. Okay. Okay. So modify center pivot, and then modify going down. Okay, there. Okay. So again, as I mentioned, guys, we just need to make sure that we're happy with the relative proportions. Is this, I guess, a good starting point? This is the head, and that's the character. Anyone with any suggestions in terms of how, again, we're looking at the storyboard. And is this a good, maybe slightly bigger? So maybe I'll just modify that, bigger like that. Okay, so this is gecko blocking. Okay. So, anyone with suggestions with regards to the scaling of this? Okay? This is fine with you guys here? All good? This one, so this is going to be our gecko character. Again, we need to model that, but that's the relative proportions, right? Between the character and the, what you call that, and the robot character. Okay? So no one with, again, we can maybe we can modify it a little bit, but what this means, guys, is for Nisarg and again, I'll save this at run S. Okay, I'll save this as blocking. Okay. So what does this mean? This means that Nisarg and Jared needs to follow this proportion. Okay, just imagine that as a bounding box. You have to make sure that your character is roughly around that height. That means you need to scale it up, make it bigger, or scale it down depending on how you model that. Okay. On top of that, anyone doing, or for the students doing the gecko character, and that's that's Jaehee and Shihao. That means that you need to use this as a reference now. Okay. So this is your reference for actually. And I just assign new material. That's going to be your reference, right? In terms of how big that character needs to be. And you have to follow that, right? If you're doing production work, scaling is very important, right? So we don't just scale things up. You might think you can just easily scale things up when you're ready, but it's not as simple as that, because once you start scaling things up uniformly, you'll notice that the proportions between, let's say, the arms, the fingers, will be off as well. So you end up remodeling that. Okay, so again, just make sure to follow this one. Okay, I'm going to save the scene. I'm going to share that with everyone. Okay, so it's clear. What else? For the students doing props, this is also important. If you're doing props, you have to make sure you use this as your reference. You can't have props that are small, right? Because a lot of you will just end up modeling it in any dimension, proportion, at any scale, and you just end up scaling that. It's not as easy as that, okay? Let me just explain why it's not as easy as that, okay? Let's say you're modeling a hammer, okay? So when you're modeling a hammer and you don't actually consider the size of the fingers or the hands of the character, you'll end up with a hammer that's really off proportion regardless if you scale it down or scale it up. Okay, so again, for example, if you model a hammer, right? And then you didn't really consider the size of the hand for the character, it doesn't matter if you scale it up and down, the size of the handle will be wrong and the proportions of the hammer will be wrong. Okay, so you have to make sure when you're modeling stuff, right, always have a look at your scale reference, right? So this is quite common when people are modeling doorknobs. They feel that they can just scale up a door or scale up a doorknob, or sorry, scale up a door, but they'll soon discover that the doorknobs are actually wrong. Okay, so it's not as simple as just scaling things up. Okay, so just make sure when you're modeling stuff, you look at the scale reference. So clear with the students doing this. So is there a rule? We normally specify the rules in production. So we don't normally do it, one-to-one scale. It really depends on the production. So there's no actual rules, but you just need to specify the rule early on. Okay? Because, for example, why is there no rules? Because, for example, if you let's say you're creating a movie where the characters are really tiny. Let's say they're ants, right? You don't necessarily model them to scale. Otherwise, you'll end up with something that's 0.0001 centimeter. And that's highly impractical, right? So you just need to specify a good starting point. Let's say we usually do it for characters. So we specify the character first, and then we scale everything based off those main characters. Okay? So it's not necessarily, specifying an exact scale, if that makes sense. Okay? So with that said, okay? Hopefully this is clear for the students doing the props and students doing the characters. Can you make sure that you're using this as a reference when you're creating your characters? Particularly how, when you're creating props, particularly the size and the proportions, right? You use this as your reference, okay? This also goes with environments, okay? So with environments, you have to make sure this is a good starting point for you, because this allows you to make sure everything is properly proportioned. Okay? I'll upload this file as soon as I can. I don't have, it's weird because I'm using a company laptop. I can't actually install OneDrive for our use. I have to use a different account, but we'll talk about that later on. Anyway, if this is clear for everyone, right? We have proportions locked up. Let's have a look at environments before I have a look at story. Environments. So what does this mean? For environments, guys, let's have a look at, if you're doing this in an actual production, the floor plan needs to be a bit more specified, right? It has to be a bit more specific. So what Isabel has is a rough floor plan, but if you're doing this in actual production, we actually really need to create a more elaborate and specific floor plan, and explain why. Okay, so I'll show you why, because what we normally do with floor plans, right, is let me show you, let me just save this particular image. Okay, so I'll save that. So save as. So it's not vital in this particular case because this floor plan isn't really, physically, I guess, accurate. But let me just show you what we end up doing with floor plans. So I'll just go here and I'll just go create, forgot where I saved it. So in the forest and then source images, I'll just call this floor plan. Okay, floor plan. Okay, there you go. So what do we normally do with floor plans? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll save the blocking scene. Okay, I'm going to create or save as. I'm going to call this environment. Okay, and we'll organize the files later on. But for now, I'll just save it as environment. Okay, so what do we normally do with floor plans? We normally create, or I'll just go to the top view. I'll import that image, and actually use the floor plan as a guide to build my environments, right? So if I look at my perspective view, see guys, now I can use that as my guide to build the environment, okay? So I need the panel here. So I understand that this is not necessarily that accurate in terms of placements, but see guys, notice now, see, this is the main facility. I need that to be significantly bigger, okay? So maybe, see, notice now that I have an idea, right? How big my characters are supposed to be in reference to the environment. So see, that's the main facility, that's the panel, that's another panel, and that's another panel. So again, this is not that accurate, but it's okay as a starting point, okay? So what do we end up doing? If you're an environment artist, you start off with blocking, okay? What do I mean by blocking? Block out those main areas, okay? So for example, I start with a cube, right? And maybe with a cube, concentrate on proportions when you're doing this, Isabel. So it's just proportions, right? How tall is that building theoretically? So what happens is the prop artist will also use that as a reference for how big their props need to be. So for example, if this is the main facility, right? So let me just adjust that, okay? So if this is your main facility, there you go. Okay, how tall is that main facility? See, we can see the characters already. How tall is that main facility? Okay, so it's supposed to be that big, right? So again, just imagine, we don't know what it looks like yet, but is it that tall? Is it that tall? Or is it that tall? Okay, so let's just assume, right? I'm looking at it, it doesn't really look good if it's that tall, because I can just imagine if the shot is here. See, notice now that might look really weird. That's too high. So I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe something like that. But again, the issue is we don't really have an accurate, I guess, representation of, the floor plan is just rough at this stage. So what you can do is you can just play around with the layout for now. Okay, so this might be your main facility, right? So main facility. So next is, this is going to be our, I'll duplicate that. This is going to be our, let's just call that communications hub. Okay, I'll scale this down. It might be circular, it doesn't matter, or you can even model that a little bit. So maybe what I'll do is I'll select the face and then maybe scale it down. And then this is going to be our first one. Okay, this is going to be our communications hub. Okay, maybe the first interaction happens in the communication hub. Okay, so that's our communication hubs, guys. So what you end up doing, just make sure that you actually position your characters there. Make sure that actually looks good from a, so see, I'm looking at it, that probably needs to be smaller. So what I'll do is I'll scale this down. So see, that's the communication hub. So I'm thinking about it, robot might end up fixing it. So see, I'm looking at it, that's probably, I don't know, too big. So maybe I'll just make that smaller. Okay, so that's our communication hub. Now, as an environment artist, if you feel that certain parts or certain elements there are important, so just an example, if you think that the communication hub there might have, let's say, some sort of broken satellite dish somewhere here, so maybe create, let's say, a really rough satellite dish. Okay, so maybe a disk, make that bigger. There you go. Okay, so maybe there's a really important satellite dish at the back. Okay, there you go. Okay, so I'll reposition that, make that smaller. And again, what happens is it provides information for the prop artist to actually start modeling that one, right? So what we're doing is we're just blocking out the environment. Maybe that one is some sort of power. Maybe this is a power bank or something. Okay, there you go. Okay, so now we just blocked out that main area. Again, I'm constantly looking at the proportions because I'm thinking about, what needs to happen here. Okay, so see, so maybe this one. So again, the more modeling you do, the better. So maybe I'll make that smaller. So maybe again, is that too big? Is that too small? Again, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Okay. So notice now that I have some sort of blackout for that area there. Okay. So another thing that I need to block out is maybe, I don't know, that mountainside, right? So what does that mountainside look like? So maybe I'll start off with, let's say, I don't know, let's do a cube. Scale it up. Okay. Scale up the cube. And maybe, I don't know, increase the subdivisions. And then maybe I'll just specify the vertex. And then turn it off. Okay. So I'll do this really fast, but the idea is, see, I'm just modifying it, and that's supposed to be some sort of mountain there, right? Now look, notice now that we have an issue with regards to. So I'm looking at it, and again, maybe, you know what? I'll make this slightly bigger. So maybe, I don't know, something like that. And maybe I'll select that, modify that. Okay. Okay. So there you go, as an example, right? Again, you can't really rely too much on your floor plan, primarily because, as I mentioned, right, it's not a very accurate floor plan at this stage. But what you can do is you can either go back to the floor plan process, or you can just do it directly in 3D. Okay. So does this make sense for as a process, right? Does this make sense for the environment artist here, particularly Isabel? Does that make sense in terms of what we need to do? So we need to block out, right? If you have this issue where you're not seeing things properly, then what you might need to do is you just need to just increase the fur clip, right? And then you can just modify that. Okay. Now again, I leave it up to you. Do you prefer creating a new floor plan and then a more accurate one where you measured already the distances between the first panel to the second panel, or you can just do it directly here? Okay. So directly inside 3D. Okay, or in 3D. Okay. So I leave it up to you. So I'll just save this. Okay. Okay. So for the props artist, particularly Meg, doing the main facility, that means you can use this as a reference already, Meg, with regards to how you can start creating or what you need in terms of proportions to build that main area. So see, you know that you need to place it here, you know that it's roughly this tall, and you know that it's roughly this wide. Okay, so now you have some sort of direction in terms of how you can perhaps start going about the process, doing that, prop. Similar with other prop artists. So if you're watching the recording, that means, see, you already have a starting point where you need to model your props and what you actually need to model on top of that and how big it is compared to your characters. Okay, so we haven't really specified it here, but again, I'm going to let you guys perhaps just work on that as you move along. So that means there's some sort of forest here. That means I might end up creating some forest object from trees here. And then we need to think about what actually needs to happen on this cliff side here. Okay? Okay, so I think that's good. So, any other questions? There's just one last thing that we need to think about. And the last thing is layout. And I understand that, rather than having a break, let's just continue on. It's really just the last topic. So how does layout work? So who's doing layout? That's Sophia, and that's Nimod, and that's Will. Okay? So how does layout work? Okay? Layout, basically, you now have the environment, and you now have the block characters. You can start building. Well, I'll just, the ideal scenario is we use referencing. So you know what? I'll just use referencing. I'll just create a new scene. Okay? So what is referencing? Basically, referencing, let me just open the environment again. Okay, so you know what? Let's just... So, what's referencing? Referencing allows you to import, not really import, but refer scenes without actually having the ability to edit or destroy them. So I don't want a situation where, someone's working on the environment and you accidentally deleted something or modified something that's not supposed to be modified. So what we normally do in production is, instead of importing an object, we actually create a reference. So I create a reference for the environment. Since the characters are there, that's going to be a good starting point. Okay? Since the environment is there, as the characters there, I don't have to import or reference my characters. But anyway, I'll just show you what you need to do from a story perspective. Just checking with Nimod and Sophia, have you tried using a sequencer before? Not yet? Okay, so how do you plan out, or how do you start building your shots? Okay, you start building your shots by going under saved layouts. We go and again, this is all recorded, so you don't have to worry too much. But anyway, perspective camera sequencer. Basically, we're going to sequence shots. Okay, to sequence shots, we have to look at the storyboard. But again, you're not locked to the storyboard, right? The storyboard is a guide. It gives you the idea of the flow of the shots, but you can always change the shots. No, change the cameras and change the shots, but you don't really want to change the story at all. So just to give you guys an idea, okay, I know that I need to start with an establishing shot. Okay, so again, panels, save layouts, camera sequencer, right? I'm going to create my shots first, or my cameras first. Okay, so this is camera, cam 1. Okay, establishing. Okay, or maybe full establishing. So cam 1, full, establish. Okay, so let's have a look at that camera. Okay, I'll go to view, camera settings, resolution gate. Okay, and then I'll just frame that camera. Okay, so let's look at framing that camera. Okay, I'll maybe just modify this. There you go. Okay, again, ideally, as let's say Isabel starts populating this environment, it will automatically update in your scene. But let's say, see, that's the facility there. Maybe I'll start with a wide shot, or maybe an establishing shot. Or you know what? Maybe there's trees there. So let me just create some trees. And I'll explain this as we move along. But you know what? Let me just add some props. Props, there you go. Trees. Okay. So this is supposed to be done in the environment area, but environment section, but I'll just demonstrate it. So see, these are not obviously the final trees, but I'll just preposition that. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's say for my first shot, okay, I want a sense of, I don't know, maybe some sort of, okay, so maybe what I want for my first shot is maybe something hidden, and maybe it just reveals itself, right? So maybe here, and then I'll just have it like that. Basically slowly revealing that research facility there. Okay, so what I'll do is maybe I'll just reposition. That's my first shot, for example. Okay. Trees. Okay, next shot. I'm going to create another shot. Or sorry, another camera. I'll call that maybe cam 2. And that is basically our, let's say this is the bird eye view. Establishing, but it's bird eye view. Okay, so again, you know what, rather than using that, let me just duplicate the existing camera. It's easier. So cam 2, bird eye. Okay, so I'll look through that camera, bird eye, and then again for my second shot it's going to be a aerial view of the place. Maybe it pans left to right. Okay, so for my third shot, maybe I'll have, let's have a look at the storyboard. Maybe for my third shot it's going to be a shot of the robot welding. Okay, so maybe I'll create another shot that I'll call that cam 3 robot weld. Okay, and then maybe I'll just look through that camera. Okay, and I'll just zoom in. Okay, maybe I prefer a 50mm lens for this, so I'll just modify the camera as well. So maybe 50, almost like we're looking at it from afar. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll just block out the character welding here, for example. Okay, so maybe he's doing some sort of welding there. Okay, so again, I'll have that. I can even animate the character if I want, so maybe I'll just animate this as well. Okay, so we have 3 cameras, guys. We have that camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. So what you can do is you can start creating your sequence. So what I'll do is I'll create my first sequence. Okay, first shot. First shot, I'm going to go under create shot, and then I'm going to call that first shot, shot 1. Okay, it's going to be called establishing. Okay, so establishing shot. It's going to use my first camera, which is full. Establishing. Again, as a layout artist, this is where you need to think about timing now. How long is this shot? It starts at frame 1. Maybe it's 2 or 3 seconds long. So at 24 frames per second, we're talking about roughly 80 frames. Okay? Maybe. Okay? So I'm calling that shot 1, establishing. It uses camera 1, which is our camera full establishing shot. It starts at frame 1, ends at frame 80. And the important thing here is the next one, new place shot placement. Can I just ask you to just make sure that it's manual? You just need to copy the start time and copy the end time and paste it to the sequence start time and sequence end time. I'll explain why later on, but that's just a really important part of this workflow. Okay, make sure this one is the same as the bottom one. Make sure this one is the same as this. Okay, so if I hit create, notice what happens. It's basically nonlinear editing. It's almost like Premiere. That's my first shot, guys. If I hit play, see, I hit play and it goes from frame 1 to frame 80. Okay, you can animate that on top, but see, that's my first shot. Next shot, create shot. Okay, shot 2 is going to be bird's eye view. Okay, now it starts at frame 81. I can't have it in between frame 1 and frame 80 because we already have a sequence there. It has to happen at the frame after that one. Okay, so I'll have it start at frame 81. Okay, maybe this lasts for 3 seconds, so maybe another 80 frames. So maybe 170, for example. Okay, and then again, remember the camera it's using, it's the bird's eye view camera. And again, I'll just copy that. Control C, make sure it's pasted here. This one, Control C, make sure it's pasted there. Okay, and then I'll create a shot. Okay, so let's have a look. This is my sequence now. See, first shot, and then second shot. Okay, so now we have a sequence going, right? We have some sort of shot sequence going. So we have a first shot. Again, we play it here, and then we have our second shot. It's animating at 24 frames per second. I'll do one more. Create, shot, and then our third shot will be, shot 3, and I'll just call that robot welding. Okay? And then I'll just have that use camera 3. And then again, 171 this time because it has to be the same frame after the previous one. And maybe this lasts for another 4 seconds. So that's 24, maybe 100. So I'm talking about 260, for example. Okay? Remember, copy and paste. Copy and paste. Okay? And then create shot. Okay? So notice what happens. We now have some sort of shot going, our sequence going. Okay? So see, first shot, camera 1. Next shot, camera 2. Third shot, it's camera 3. See? So again, we're able to create some sort of sequence going. Right? Can you animate the cameras? Yes. So just to show you, camera shot 1 goes from frame 1 to frame 80. That means I can animate this camera going from frame 1 to frame 80. Maybe I'll have it, so I'll select the camera, set a keyframe at frame 1, go to, let's say, frame 80, and have it just move to the right a little bit, okay? And then set a keyframe again, okay? So see, notice what happens. If I hit play, I have that camera moving, okay? Let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so I think that's Will as well doing this. Okay, so what I'll do is at frame, this shot goes from frame 81 to 170. That means this camera can be animated at between those times. So maybe I'll set a keyframe at frame 80 and maybe at frame, I don't know, 170. I'll just have it dolly in. So maybe there. Okay, set a keyframe. Okay, so let's have a look at our sequence now. I'll play it here. Play, so that's our shot. And then we have it dollying in. Okay, and then lastly, our third shot, if you just want that animated, again, I'll need to animate this between 171 and frame 260. So I'll just animate that, 260. So 171, so maybe 170. There we go. So 170. I'll select this camera. You know what? Maybe I'll just do a dolly in. Or I don't know. Maybe I know. Maybe some sort of crane shot. There you go. So maybe some sort of crane shot. Starts here, goes down. Okay, so again, what I'll do is I'll start here, set a keyframe for that camera, go to the last frame, have it move down. So now we see the character welding, set a keyframe. Okay, so let's have a look at my sequence now. So see, hit play, I have that. Okay, then it cuts to that shot. And then at frame 171, it cuts to that shot, a crane shot with our character welding. Okay, so that means that you can duplicate the character if you want. You can slightly animate the character as well. But again, see, I'm able to create my sequence. Okay? So, again, this is recorded, but do you guys roughly get what you need to do in layout, in story? So that's Will, Nima, Sophia. Roughly what you need to do. So what you're doing, right? You're implementing the storyboard. Can you create additional shots? Yes, you can. Okay, and we'll cover more techniques later on. But what you need to do by the end of 4 weeks is to complete that sequence. Is it advisable to add audio? Yes. Is it advisable to animate the characters a little bit? Yes. But again, is it advisable to play around with the camera? Yes. What do I mean by play around with the camera? Meaning, see, change the camera lens, maybe play around with depth of field, all of that stuff, right? This is cinematography, digital cinematography. So you just have to really, I guess, think about each of those shots, okay? So Will is good, Nima is good, Sophia is good as well. With that said, this is what I want you guys to do for next week. I think we covered almost every single aspect of it. What I want you guys to do is, sorry, I did forget one thing, right? For the characters doing the gecko, so that's Shihao and Jaehi. What modeling technique are you comfortable with? Do you do ZBrush stuff, or do you do sculpting, or do you just model stuff in Maya? So just checking with, again, if you've used ZBrush before and you're comfortable with digital sculpting, I normally prefer organic characters to be just done in ZBrush, and then we use some sort of retopology workflow for this. Maya for Xiao. How about Jaehi? So again, if you use Maya, that's fine, okay? But normally, right, when we deal with these types of characters that are organic, we normally prefer a sculpting workflow where we just retopologize the character after. But if you're not comfortable with that workflow or haven't done it at all, then just continue what we have. So it looks like we might end up just doing a Maya workflow for your characters, okay? Jared and Nisarg, you probably end up just doing it in Maya. But if you want additional detail, you might need to export that to something like ZBrush or a sculpting package to create proper normal maps. So basically, create normal maps, displacement maps, and other packages, and then just bring it back to Maya. But we'll have a look at that, I guess, later on. Okay? So, last thing. What I want you guys to do for next week is let's just concentrate on the blocking aspect of each of your stuff. Okay? That means, right? Show me a work in progress or a work, either screenshots or maybe a rough layout of, let's say, the first 2 or 3 shots. So again, just work in progress, right? You don't have to complete the entire thing. If you're doing characters, then maybe you just do, you just block out the proportions first, or just do a rough version of the character. If you're doing props, just maybe a block out of the props. If you're not familiar of the term of blocking, that means this is a common technique. See guys, we normally do this in production, because in production, we can't just wait for you to finish after 2 weeks or 3 weeks before we start using the assets. So again, in production, we always want first passes, we always want blackouts, because the blackout is also useful for story. It's also useful for environments. So we don't wait for you to finish in 5 weeks to complete everything and fully texture everything. It never happens in actual production. So we prefer that, we impose that you guys actually create a blackout first of your character, or object, so we can actually end up using that in other parts of the production. Okay? So, with that said, okay, for the students doing modeling for characters, environments, and props, can I ask you to do a blackout as early as next week? Okay? So that includes Isabel here. So just block it out. And also for the students who already modeled the robot character, that's great. That means you have more time to just add more detail there, which is good. Or you can start blocking out the props as well, right? The welder and the welding stuff and other things, okay? For the props, block it out. That includes Meg, basically block out not only the main facility, but what happens with how does it connect to the other areas, right? So you need to think about those things, okay? So blackout process, that means, again, share your work in progress. That means for the students doing story, what I want you to do is maybe just block out or lay out like the first 5 shots, just to give you a good idea in terms of how that process will go. Okay, so maybe 5 shots. Okay, maybe the early one. You don't have to complete the entire thing, but again, I just want to see you guys, try out the sequencing workflow, especially if you haven't done it before. Okay, so Nisarg and Will, and that's Sophia, clear? Okay, and I think that's it, guys. Okay, so any questions before we wrap up? Okay. All good. In terms, again, everything's recorded. I'll just share this in Teams. Make sure that everyone has it. Again, it does contribute to your marks. And again, it actually helps you with your assessment as well. because if you don't do this, what happens is if you share stuff in the end, then what you'll probably end up giving us is something we can't use because it's not checked, or it's not really been seen by anyone else in the production. So it's always a good idea to just engage in the challenge, right? So what I'll do is maybe I'll just share this here and start a post, and then let's see. So it's also for others to see what you're up to, okay? I'll share the OneDrive link for everyone as well. So this is week 2 challenge. Okay, and then I'll share that here. So this RTA 1097, and then that's it. Okay. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, so let me just turn off the recording at this stage. You can stay online if you want. For the students here, if you have any questions, just let me know. But I'll stop the recording, and I'll see you guys next week. We do have a question. That's right. So for the robot, so question from Nisarg, you're creating the robot, the welding, and the welder, and also the futuristic wrench, because the robot needs to, actually use those tools. So basically, the robot, the wrench, and the welder. Okay. So how does that welder look like? Okay. And I think that's it. Okay. So I'll stop the recording, and I'll also stop the recording here.